Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's online press briefing. I have a few announcements to make today. First, let me give you some updates regarding the President's agenda. As I'm sure you are aware, this morning President von der Leyen was in the European Parliament and gave a speech on the EU's response to the coronavirus crisis. In her speech, the President said that it was the moment to make our economies, societies, and way of life more sustainable and resilient. And she recalled the need for massive investment to jumpstart our economies and the role of the EU budget in this regard. You will find the President's speech, of course, on our EU Press Corner and in our daily news. This afternoon, the President will participate in a video conference with G7 leaders on the response to the coronavirus crisis, and there will be a readout after that meeting. I now pass the floor to Johannes, who has an announcement to make on mobile apps. Johannes.
Yes, good morning. So today the European Union delivers on its coordinated approach for efficient, secured and privacy-compliant tracing apps to support the gradual lifting of confinement measures. You will remember that we had a recommendation on that last week. So today the Member States, supported by the Commission, adopted a toolbox to use applications for efficient contact tracing and warning in response to the pandemic. The Commission will also publish a bit later today guidance on the development of these new apps to support the fight against coronavirus in relation to data protection. This comes a bit later today. We want to ensure that all apps respect the EU strong data protection rules, that all apps are secure and efficient, because such apps can only show their full potential if many people are using them. And therefore we want to give Europeans the trust in these apps and make at disposal apps that they can fully trust and adopt. We have a press release on the toolbox, and we will have one on the guidance later, and we also have a nice little clip which explains how a tracing app works.
Excellent, thank you, Johannes. Je voudrais aussi vous rappeler que cet après-midi, à partir de 15h30, aura lieu une vidéoconférence des ministres de l'économie et des finances. Et enfin, j'attire votre attention sur le fait que toutes les versions linguistiques de notre feuille de route européenne sur la levée des mesures de confinement sont en train d'être mises en ligne ou sont en ligne sur notre site web consacré à la réponse de l'UE au coronavirus. Voilà, c'est la fin des annonces pour aujourd'hui. Et je vois que plusieurs personnes maintenant ont demandé la parole. Je passe d'abord la parole à David Carretta.
Eric, bonjour.
David, oui, tu as la parole, merci.
Merci à toi. Une question migration et je te demanderai un follow-up tout de suite après, question plus ou moins liée. Selon l'IOM, hier, 47 migrants étaient débarqués à Tripoli. Il y a eu 5 morts dans cette opération. L'embarcation en question était dans la SAR zone de Malte, mais Malte n'a pas répondu aux demandes de secours. C'est un navire privé qui a sauvé les migrants en mer et les a transférés aux gardes-côtes libyennes. Je voulais vous demander si la Commission a une réaction par rapport à cet incident et si c'est normal de suspendre les obligations de sauvetage en mer dans les conditions d'aujourd'hui, la crise de coronavirus, etc. Merci.
Alors, je vais appeler Adalbert au podium.
Bonjour David. Alors, je ne te vois plus sur l'écran comme avant. Je n'ai pas de Merci. Je n'ai pas de nouveaux commentaires ni de nouvelles positions par rapport aux questions de sauvetage en mer. Donc, comme tu le sais, la question de sauvetage en mer n'est pas du ressort de la Commission européenne. C'est dans la compétence des États membres et ou de pays tiers. Ce sont des questions qui sont régies par le droit international et par conséquent, c'est aux États membres d'assurer une bonne coordination avec d'autres pays des opérations de sauvetage en mer.
Bien entendu, David, nous regrettons toute perte de vie dans ce genre de circonstances. Ça reste un drame qu'aucun de nous ne peut accepter. Mais cela dit, la situation juridique est celle qu'Adalbert vient de te décrire. Tu avais un follow-up, cela dit.
Un follow-up, c'est une question un petit peu différente, mais je vais aussi revenir sur la question Malte. Frontex a fait bannir de la plateforme Flight Aware la possibilité de tracer les vols en SAR zone dans la Méditerranée centrale de ces avions. La raison, c'est European Government Data Rules. Alors, je me demandais quelles sont ces règles des gouvernements européens qui permettent de bannir la possibilité de tracer des avions d'une agence européenne. Et deuxième question, les deux, Malte et cette décision, disons, de Frontex, est-ce que ça, c'est le mode de vie européen? C'est-à-dire, est-ce que le mode de vie européen, c'est d'arrêter de sauver des gens qui se trouvent en mer, même si c'est la responsabilité des États membres, qui sont des États membres de l'Union européenne, qui a ses valeurs, etc. Et c'est le mode de vie européen caché ce que fait Frontex, en particulier la collaboration avec les soi-disant gardes-côtes libyennes, parce que ces avions communiquent les positions des embarcations des migrants en difficulté aux soi-disant gardes-côtes libyennes. Donc une question plus technique et une autre plus politique. Merci pour votre réponse.
Merci beaucoup, David. Alors, tout d'abord, sur la question de la disponibilité des données mises en ligne par Frontex, je n'ai pas connaissance du changement dans les règles. Donc, je vais si tu me le permets, regarder ça avec Frontex. Ceci dit, rien ne t'empêche aussi de t'adresser directement au service presse de Frontex, qui, je pense, sera plus rapide pour te donner les réponses à tes questions. Alors ensuite, quant à la coopération, je n'utiliserai pas forcément ce mot dans ce contexte, mais par rapport aux interactions de Frontex avec les gardes-côtes libyens, juste une précision, il ne s'agit pas d'une relation privilégiée que Frontex aurait avec ces autorités-là. Ce que fait Frontex est d'alerter tous les services de coordination de sauvetage en mer qui sont pertinents par rapport à une situation particulière lors d'une situation où Frontex aurait connaissance d'une embarcation qui aurait besoin d'assistance. Donc ce n'est pas Frontex qui choisit le centre compétent, ce n'est pas du tout dans la compétence de Frontex, mais Frontex alerte bien tous les services compétents de tous les États qui pourraient éventuellement être concernés, et c'est ensuite aux États concernés de prendre les responsabilités selon le droit international. Alors, pour ta question plus politique sur est-ce que c'est bien le mode de vie européen, écoute, les éléments que je pourrais t'apporter sont ceux que j'ai déjà pu citer à plusieurs reprises au midi précédent. Nous sommes conscients des difficultés que les États peuvent avoir actuellement, en particulier Malte et surtout l'Italie, à cause de l'urgence sanitaire à laquelle les États et l'Europe dans son ensemble est confrontée. Et donc la gestion des migrations dans ce genre de circonstances est particulièrement compliquée. Alors évidemment, les opérations de sauvetage en mer continuent à être utiles dans ce genre de contexte lorsque des embarcations sont présentes. Et donc c'est aux États membres de prendre les responsabilités selon le droit international applicable.
Voilà, David, ce que nous pouvons te dire aujourd'hui sur ces questions. Je voudrais savoir s'il y a d'autres questions sur ce sujet pour Adalbert. Donc, je vais demander à Athanasios. Athanasios, is your question for Adalbert?
I guess not. I think it's more for Peter Stano.
Okay, then hold on a minute. I would ask everybody who has raised their hand to unraise their hand unless the question is for Adalbert on home affairs issues. Okay, I see Maria Sarah still has her hand raised. Maria, you have the floor, Maria, but I can't see your mic. No mic. Sorry, we cannot pass you the floor. You don't have an active mic. So I don't see any other questions for Adalbert. So Athanasios, we pass you the floor again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Eric. I'd like to call your attention to yet another NAVTEX issued by Turkey yesterday, and that has to do with potential drilling operations from a vessel called Yavuz inside the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus, and especially a field where Total and Eni are currently operating. It seems that they are going back after a break of 2 or 3 months, 2 months, I think, in the specific field. So what are you going to do about it? Do you have a comment? Do you have another statement? Are you going to follow up through the High Representative Borrell in his communication with the Turkish authorities? Thanks.
Thank you. Indeed, there was a break, but there was no change in the EU's position on Turkey's illegal drilling activities in the Eastern Mediterranean. So the position of the EU is quite clear, has not changed, and we said many, many times that we are expressing our concerns and strong condemnation of Turkey's continued activities linked to illegal drilling in the Eastern Mediterranean. We are standing very strongly with Cyprus, expressing EU solidarity with Cyprus regarding the respect of its sovereignty and sovereign rights in accordance with international law. And when you were asking what are we going to do, I would just like to recall that this issue was a subject of a number of conclusions, both by the Foreign Affairs Council and by the European Council. And in November 2019, a framework was made for targeted restrictive measures in response to discontinued activities. And as a follow-up to that, in February, at the end of February, first sanctions were introduced. So this is something which the member states are watching very closely. And indeed, if the illegal activities continue, the EU will act in line with its position as outlined in the conclusions I was mentioning.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to see if there are any other questions for Peter. I have Georgi. Georgi, you have raised your hand, so I guess it's for Peter. You have the floor. Hold on. Yeah, your mic is on. You have the floor.
Hi. By the way, I don't know how to switch on the camera. Let me try.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, it works. It works.
Question is for Peter?
Yeah, I would like to ask Peter, is it the right time for the European Union, what does Mr. Borrell think, to investigate the origins of the COVID crisis? I'm asking this, of course, because the US president seems to be very interested in the subject.
Well, since you asked specifically about the High Representative, I think he was on the record several times in his public appearances or remarks to the media or statements, or even the last tweet he issued on this issue you are mentioning yesterday, that right now what we need is concentrated joint global effort to tackle the pandemic, to tackle the impact of the pandemic and to help the countries which are affected most or could be affected most, because this is the time of action to fight this virus. It's not time for anything else. So we need to join forces based on solidarity, joint efforts, and multilateralism to continue fighting and combating this coronavirus and its impact, because this is the main task of today. And I think this is opinion shared with almost everyone around.
Absolutely. Okay. So I would like everyone who does not have a question for Peter to unraise their hand. I see that Patrizia Antonini has her hand raised, so I suppose it's for Peter. We're going to give you the floor. Patrizia, you have the floor. Is it for Peter?
Yes, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, everybody. I have actually a follow-up on Georgi's question, because I would like to understand how you assess these cables of the US State Department warning of safety issues at Wuhan lab studying bat coronavirus. I mean, you have had exchanges with the US about these documents, and how do you assess it? Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure I have an idea of those cables or documents you are mentioning, so if you could maybe be more specific, but on a general level, we are in contact and we are communicating with all our partners on the international scene in order to find the most effective and workable solutions in this global crisis, because this is a global crisis that requires global answers. And I mean, that's basically it.
That was very clear.
Unless
Patrizia, unless you want to specify something on the cables, but perhaps this is something that we can come back to bilaterally if you have more information to provide on the cables. Georgi, I see you still have your hand raised, so I suppose you have a follow-up for Peter. We'll give you the floor again.
Oh, I just don't know how to.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, well, we're working on the technical solutions to basically mute people once they have asked their question. Okay, I only see one other person for the moment with a question. No, I have Gillian. I had Gillian, exactly. But she's disappeared from my list. Yes, Gillian, you've asked for the floor. I suppose it's for Peter. We give you the
actually,
floor.
I'm sorry.
It's not for Peter. Okay, then hold on. We'll come back to you afterwards. Quentin, you have raised your hand. If it's for Peter, you have the floor.
It is for Peter. I just also want to be aware of this commission and the EIS statement on the US cables regarding China's and what's happening in the labs in Yuan, and what was issued by the State Department. So if I can be in the loop of the Commission position on it, that would be great.
If I can say, Peter has just said we're not aware of the cables that are being mentioned. So for the moment, there's no way we can react. So we would be grateful if the media basically you and Patrizia made us aware of the documents you are referring to precisely, so that Peter can then answer you, and then we will be very happy to do so, and we'll include you in the list of people who will get the answer.
Unless it's classified cables.
Yes, if they are classified cables. But if you, I suppose that our colleagues have had access to them. So we'll come back to you, but we need more information on which specific cables you are referring to. Thank you. Okay, I think that is it for Peter. Gillian, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. I have two questions about vaccine financing. The first question is whether we have more information on this funding conference that von der Leyen announced for May 4th. And second, I was wondering whether the Commission has any plans to announce more funding for other vaccine programs, because so far the Commission's, of course, given money to the German biotech company CureVac.
Okay, no, I have no complementary information or more information to provide you on the announcement that was made by President von der Leyen yesterday. Indeed, she announced the date and the form of the event. On research funding, I give the floor to Johannes, but I don't think we have major announcements to make at this stage.
No, indeed we don't, but I believe we received a question also in writing. Just to add or to correct a little bit the impression, it's not only CureVac, it's also part of the 18 projects that we fund in the framework of the emergency call that we launched already in January. There are 2 which support vaccine development, and there's a 3rd one which supports research on vaccines with supercomputers. The list is online. So it's not only CureVac, and it's not only via the means of the EIB loan, but also via the calls on the Horizon 2020.
Yes, I think that's an important point to make. The Commission has actually initiated already quite a few series of actions to support vaccine development, and you can find all the information online. Okay, any other questions for Johannes whilst he is on the podium? If I can ask only those who have a question for Johannes, so either on the tracing app or on research, to keep their hand raised. I see Gillian. Gillian, do you have another question, a follow-up perhaps?
Oh, no, I should wait. Sorry, I'll take my hand off. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, Quentin.
No, sorry, like I kind of.
We all need to get into the routine of unraising our hand after having asked our question to facilitate the management. I see Tomasz, but Tomasz, you have the floor.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's not for you though. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I have the question on tracing applications. I'm wondering whether the European Commission is systematically assessing or evaluating the applications used or being developed in the member states. I'm asking since because in Poland there is some controversies on this tracing or tracking application, and I'd like to ask you whether you are aware of it and whether you have any comment.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we are aware, but let me maybe explain what we do. So we just published a toolbox. The toolbox is an agreement between or among member states in the framework of the e-health committee, supported by the Commission. It's quite a long document. It sets out the, if you want, guidance or framework in which tracing apps are to be developed. I think what you refer to as a tracking app. But here we speak about tracing apps. Tracing apps are there to trace infection chains, to warn potentially infected users that they can get tested or stay in quarantine to basically stop the spread of the virus. This is what a tracing app does, and it's fundamental that it respects the personal data. We do not recommend to use personal location for this. We actually say it's not necessary. This is pretty clear in the toolbox, but also in the guidelines that are supposed to come, or that will come still today, on which I mentioned earlier today at the beginning of the midday, which will clearly address the data protection angle of tracing apps. So you have the toolbox, we'll have the guidelines on data protection, and we say clearly that geolocation data is not necessary and should not be used for that. I think that gives you just as to your question. Now, will we assess all apps which are out there? No, this is not our role. What the role of the toolbox is to give a framework in which the apps should be developed. And then and also actually the toolbox contains an overview of all apps and developments which are out there. So it's quite interesting to take a look at that. But once again, what you refer to as a tracking app, which is not covered by the toolbox and what we put out today.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think those were all the questions for Johannes, assuming that Quentin, your hand is still raised for a technical reason, not because you've asked for the floor again. So are there any other questions for us today? Raise your hand. Oliver, yes, I had seen your hand. So Oliver, you have the floor.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Hi, thanks for organizing this. I have a question concerning sustainable finance and the advisory consulting contract the Commission gave to the research arm of BlackRock. And I know, I've read, of course, the official reply you gave to The Guardian and then probably to other media as well. But given the uproar in the European Parliament, where several groups and also liberals actually said they're not happy with this, I was wondering, are you aware of sort of the PR problem this raises, the fact that actually you want to be consulted on green and sustainable finance by one of the biggest, investment funds in the world that is actually making lots of money. So there's both a possible conflict of interest issue, but it's also a matter of, how does it look like to hand such a consulting contract to one of the key actors in an industry that you actually want to reform fundamentally? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eric, and thanks, Oliver. You usually sit over here, so I look into this camera over here. No, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to clarify some of these issues that have been going around in the press and some of the inaccurate reporting as well on this. So first of all, I just want to clarify on the tender itself and on the procedure that was followed. I can say very, very clearly that the procedure for awarding the contract to carry out a study, just a study at that, was carried out in full and strict compliance with the applicable EU procurement rules. Okay, so that includes the eligibility of tenders and the prevention of any potential conflict of interest. If you want, I can go into a little bit more detail on this, on the actual selection procedure. This was made on the basis of a set of standard criteria, which included, amongst others, the quality of the offer, the ability to deliver input on the elements included in the tender, technical professional experience, and the ability to carry out a broad mapping of best practices. And in this case, this was the best offer compared to the other tenders, both financially and technically. Now, I think it's important to say, and Oliver, I think you mentioned it as well, this study that will be carried out and which will be made public is one of the many reports and one of the many consultations that will inform the Commission's policy on sustainable finance. Just to give you one example, we launched last week a consultation on the renewed sustainable finance strategy, yet again allowing people to provide input into our policy on sustainable finance. And I can, of course, talk you completely through all of the different reports and all of the different consultations that are ongoing on that. I would just finish off by saying that, in any of the preparatory work that we do leading to any of our proposals in this area, the Commission has been fully transparent and inclusive. And I would just note here the high-level expert group on sustainable finance and the technical expert group on sustainable finance have made a number of recommendations over the years on this. That obviously feeds into our work on this. And I can go through all of those reports that we have, that we've received to date on all of this. So I would leave it there for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Assuming that people have raised their hand based on the fact that they want to ask you a question either on this or on other related issues, I have Patrizia Antonini once again. Patrizia, is this on this issue?
No, this is not for Daniel, but I want to go back to Peter if possible.
Well,
because
hold on then, because let's try. We need to. I know it's difficult for us all to get into the rhythm, but it's very important that we try to organize things by subject. Simply because, as you know, we make available the different questions and answer sessions by theme available on EBS afterwards, and therefore, if we keep jumping between subjects, it becomes very, very difficult to organize this. So, we'll come back to you, Patrizia, perhaps in a second. But I first want to see whether there are other questions for Dan. So if you have a question for Dan, keep your raise hand button pushed. I see Marine. So Marine Laouche.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour Marine. Est-ce que c'est pour Dan?
Absolument, c'est un follow-up sur BlackRock.
On vous entend très mal.
C'est un follow-up sur BlackRock.
Oui,
est-ce que vous m'entendez mieux?
Oui, parfait, merci.
Bonjour, je voulais juste deux autres critiques qui sont faites sur le choix de BlackRock dans ce contrat. c'est par les parlementaires, c'est d'une part que c'est une compagnie américaine et qu'ils auraient préféré que vous privilégiez une compagnie européenne. Donc, je voulais savoir si vous avez une réponse à ça. Et également le montant qui est attribué pour cette étude qui apparemment est d'environ 500 000 euros. Donc, est-ce que c'est un montant normal pour ce type d'étude est-ce que c'est beaucoup? Je ne sais pas, je demande. Merci.
Bonjour Marine, merci pour ta question. J'espère que tu vas bien. Sur le premier volet de ta question, je répéterai juste le fait que la procédure a suivi toutes les règles normales en ce qui concerne procurement rules. Le deuxième volet, quant au montant, c'est pas 500 000, c'est 280 000. Donc c'est inférieur aux montants qui sont dans la presse, donc 280 000.
Et a priori, lorsque la Commission fixe un montant pour un contrat, elle le fait sur la base de ce qu'elle croit être le volume de travail qui est nécessaire pour effectuer le travail, en l'occurrence cette étude. Donc, on ne choisit pas un montant comme cela en le sortant d'un chapeau. C'est basé sur une estimation qui n'a rien à voir évidemment avec le contractant qui finit par gagner le contrat ou pas. Et en ce qui concerne la nationalité de l'entreprise, bien entendu, il y a des obligations pour la Commission d'accepter des offres venant d'entreprises qui correspondent à des critères de sélection qui sont définis. Et si la nationalité de l'entreprise ne fait pas partie de ces critères, alors il n'y a pas de raison d'exclure une compagnie pour son origine nationale.
Si je peux juste ajouter un petit point, le contrat en question, c'est pour mener une étude, et pas plus. Voilà. Et ça, c'est la seule chose que je voulais juste ajouter, et que le fait que dans notre High-Level Expert Group on Sustainable Finance, ça commande beaucoup de personnes de civil society, des NGO, business sector, EU and international sector.
Voilà, je vois que Tommaso a demandé la parole. Je suppose que c'est encore sur ce sujet ou sur un autre sujet pour Dan. Tommaso, tu as la parole.
Bonjour. Can you hear me?
Is your question for Dan?
No, actually, no.
Okay, then, sorry, we note your name down. We'll come back to you. But again, I'm trying to organize this in such a way that we can discuss issues one by one. Are there any other questions for Dan? No. In that case, we go back to Patricia, who had a follow-up for Peter. So, Patricia, if you can push the raise hand button again. Great, thank you. We give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Eric.
You're welcome.
My follow-up with Peter. I understand these documents, the cables I was talking about, the Washington Post is reporting on, they are unclassified in the United States. I understand you have not had communication on these from the United States, but I wonder whether you will ask some information on these cables and on all this issue to Washington. Thank you.
Well, thank you. In the meantime, indeed, I checked the Washington Post story you were referring to. Actually, I didn't see anything about unclassifying those cables. Cables are usually internal communication between diplomats of the ministries. So, again, we are not commenting on stuff that is publicized and made public in the papers, especially or in the media, especially if it concerns the internal communication of other entities, in this case, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or if you want, State Department of the United States. That's one thing. The other thing, as I said, we are raising with our partners, in contact with our partners, issues that are on the agenda, which are crucial, which need to be solved. At this stage, what needs to be solved is to deal with the pandemic and its impact on the lives of the people, on the lives of our societies and countries. So this is the main issue on the minds of everyone who is engaged in really solving this crisis. And then there will be a time for lessons learned, for assessing what went wrong, who made mistakes, etc., etc. But right now, the priority and all the efforts and all the communication with the partners is focused on tackling the pandemic.
Yes, if I can just add something, I think that when we will come to the issue of lessons learned, it will be very much with a future-oriented focus. It will be very much in terms of deciding what are the improvements we can bring to our systems, to our processes, to our cooperation mechanisms, to our preparations in order to be able to avoid that such a situation repeats itself in the future, or that we plan how to prepare for other types of events that could come up and that could stress our systems as the pandemic is doing right now. So before you go, I'm going to give the attendees one last chance of asking you a question. I see that Patricia has raised her hand again. So Patricia, we give you the floor again. No? Okay. So that was a slight technical mistake. So I see no further questions for you, Peter. Thank you very much. Are there other issues for us today? Now is the time to raise your hand. Tommaso, yes, we come back to you now. Thank you very much. Tommaso, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's just a question, I don't know actually for whom is it precisely, I think for Martha, if she's there.
She is, yeah.
It's about the technicality of the SURE program, because I would like just to know if the debt which the state assumes towards the Commission has a higher degree of seniority vis-à-vis the outstanding debt of that state or not.
Thank you, Tommaso, for this question. It's a very technical question, which I would prefer to check with the experts before coming back to you. As you know, the SURE instrument is based on the idea that the Commission goes to the markets and borrows money and then lends it back to member states. Now, when it comes to the technical details about, maturities and the interest rates, at this stage, it's very difficult to provide you any answer, but I will come back to you bilaterally on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Marta while she is on the podium? Tommaso, you've asked for the floor again?
No.
No, okay.
Sorry.
No problem, don't worry. Okay, I don't see any other questions for Marta. Any other issues that you would want to raise before we close the session? Yes, we had one question from Maria Psara, who could not reach us, but we've managed to contact her, and it was a question for Johannes. So Johannes will tell us what the question was.
Yeah, I'm reading the question. Maria is asking, some MEPs say that the Commission hasn't ensured that these apps shall be voluntary and not forced upon people, and that these apps will collect only anonymous and not centralized personal data. I think I replied to that already. I already said that we will have the guidance on the data protection aspects later today. There you will find all detailed information, but indeed, it's fundamental that the installation and the use of an app is voluntary. That's why I said earlier, we want to ensure citizens that they can trust in these apps, that they respect security, privacy, data protection, that they're effective, so that people use them because it's voluntary. So for us, this is fundamental. Also in the sense that you will never know who actually had or was suspicious of having a coronavirus infection. So this is, of course, personal data is protected. So the idea of tracing is not that the user knows who might have had it, but that he has had contact with someone who could have had it. So yes, this is, of course, also fundamental for us. Also in terms of the time, I mean, data should only be kept as long as necessary, and all these apps should only work as long as necessary to contain the spread. So the idea is really to have a time limited until it's, but we don't know today until how long that will be, but to have a time limited. So all this is clearly in the toolbox, and more on the data protection aspects, even more clearly defined in the guidelines. I also said earlier, that location tracking is not part of our guidelines. We actually commit not to use that. So I think I can't be any clearer on that.
Okay, thank you very much. I do not see any further questions, so we will call it a day, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you very much.